How much time passed between the inventions of the first computer and the appearance of the modern one? The first electronic computer in history is the ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. It was invented in 1945 by American scientists. But there's an older machine. It's the Babbage difference engine. English engineer Charles Babbage built it in 1822. This means more than 200 years have passed since the first computer, and we would have thought so if, at the beginning of the 20th century, divers hadn't discovered a computer more than 2,000 years old. In 1900, a group of divers searched for sea sponges in the Mediterranean Sea between the island of Crete and mainland Greece. But instead of sponges, they found sunken treasure ships. It was one of the most significant archaeological finds of that time. At the bottom were Greek marble sculptures and many other artifacts. Among them, divers found a strange piece of stone the size of a large book. They ignored it and put it with other finds in the museum. A few months later, archaeologists began to study the block and discovered that a strange object with bronze gears was hidden inside it. This shocked all scientists because, according to historical data, such things could not exist in ancient Greece. The technologies of that time were not so developed. Scientists started studying this object and realized they had no idea what it was. They called it the Antikythera mechanism, and they had been trying to unravel its purpose for over 100 years. The fragility of the object added complexity. It had been underwater for a millennia. Its internal instruments were damaged, and when scientists touched them, they fell apart. Over many years of research, the object has split into 82 fragments, becoming a real puzzle for scientists worldwide. They found out that it was a machine designed for astronomical calculations. With the help of X-rays, computer tomography, and virtual modeling, people could partially recreate the image of the mechanism. It was a complex structure consisting of 30 rotating gears that turned the dial. The whole mechanism was set in motion with a hand crank. All this was necessary for the ancient Greeks to track the positions of the moon and the sun and calculate the time of eclipses and the Olympic Games. It's as if Silicon Valley was in ancient Greece and the best minds united to create a revolutionary startup. The Antikythera mechanism showed that people in the distant past had excellent knowledge of astronomy and technologies for studying the starry sky. Considering that time, it was not just a machine, but a supercomputer. People entered data into it and got the result after the complex calculations it performed. In 2016, scientists found an inscription on the device containing more than 3,000 symbols. It was something like a manual for use. The text had information about eclipse colors, celestial body movement, and astrological predictions. It was like a reference list of all the events that happened to the planets in the sky. The Greeks realized that all astronomical bodies in the starry sky moved along the same routes. That is, they had orbits close to the plane of motion of our planet around the sun. Ancient astronomers couldn't calculate the path of their movement, so they created the Antikythera mechanism. This was one of its main functions. The researchers found confirmation of this version in the words of the Roman lawyer Cicero. In one of his quotes, there was a mention of a computing machine created by mathematician Archimedes. According to Cicero, the machine could depict the movement of 5 stars called wanderers. At that time, people called celestial bodies that way. Archimedes had lived before the Antikythera mechanism was invented, but perhaps he created the drawings that became the basis of the device. The mechanism worked, and when you turned the handle on it, it rotated the gears in the front and rear parts of the device. And then, the dial showed you the direction of movement of space objects. Besides, the machine had an astronomical calendar inside and tracked the time of sporting events, such as the Olympic Games, and also helped to calculate the exact time of the eclipse. Apparently, the Antikythera mechanism was something like a powerful organizer used by scientists or wealthy citizens of Greece. But what is most unusual is that its creator probably installed the function that changed the observation properties depending on the observer's location. This means that ancient astronomers had to enter different coordinates in different areas for the correct result. NASA computers can do all these things today. These expensive multi-million-dollar devices work with electricity, chips, processors, and thousands of other things. And the ancient Greeks achieved the same result 2,000 years ago with the help of this small device. This changes the idea of the technologies of ancient Greece. People of that time had plumbing and used steam to control some equipment. They were developed, but no one expected them to go so far. Archaeologists were sure that people of ancient times used giant rough gears to operate windmills. And now, it turns out that they could create small and complex mechanisms that modern scientists couldn't figure out for 100 years. Divers continue to study the seabed where the Antikythera mechanism was found. They have already found other items, such as nails from the ship and a bronze ring. Such underwater excavations are dangerous and complicated, so the research takes a long time. Experts think that the Antikythera mechanism was not a single copy. Perhaps the ancient Greeks made the same or similar machines. Maybe they're hidden somewhere or were melted down to create something else. In those days, bronze was a costly metal, so when ancient astronomical computers broke down, people could melt them and sell the metal. Some researchers refer to the Antikythera mechanism as the ancient prototype of all modern devices. Phones, computers, and tablets have something in common with this machine. By the way, have you heard of the odometer device? This device tracks the distance traveled by car or other means of transport. Nowadays, odometers are digital, but this technology used to be mechanical, and the ancient Greeks were the first to invent it. According to some records, Archimedes might have created it. The Roman later adopted this device for use during long journeys to aid in road construction. The ancient Greeks were the first to attempt to understand the rules of geometry. The Babylonians and Egyptians used geometry in different spheres of life. However, the Greeks decided to use logical reasoning to establish the rules and formulas that we still use today. Archimedes observed that when a solid object was immersed in water, it displaced a mass of water equal to the volume of the object. Have you heard of the Hippocratic Oath? This document is read aloud by all doctors before they start practicing medicine. For us, concepts such as confidentiality between a doctor and a patient seem commonplace, as well as a doctor's duty to always try to cure and save people's lives. But all of this was invented by ancient Greek Hippocrates. In addition to the famous oath, he was one of the first to make a scientific leap in medicine. In ancient times, people viewed illnesses as punishment for bad deeds. But Hippocrates discovered that diseases were natural and that the human body could react differently to them. This may seem obvious now, but the ancient Greeks reached this conclusion in 460 BCE. Aristotle was the first to suggest that our planet is a sphere, and thanks to him, we enjoy movies, TV series, and performances. The ancient Greeks invented theater in the form we know it today. Aristotle wrote the first rules of drama in history, which guide directors and screenwriters on how to keep the viewer's attention. Greek writers created plays in various genres, including tragedies, satires, and comedies. All of this contributed to the formation of Western culture, and that's why many directors enjoy staging ancient plays. And this is only a small part of what the Greeks invented. Therefore, it's quite logical that they were able to create the Antikythera mechanism.
The lost city of Atlantis may have actually been found. Not really. Two researchers were working in the waters off the coast of Cuba when they discovered the ruins of what looked like an ancient submerged city. That happened about 20 years ago, and yet no one really talks about it today. It's like the authorities just took the research, locked it away in some top-secret room, and decided no one else should know about it. But why? Well, I'm going to tell you. Back in 2001, Paulina Zalitsky, a marine engineer, and her husband, Paul Weinswig, were hired to explore the waters off Cuba's western coast. They had two main objectives: to search for old shipwrecks, possibly hiding treasures like gold and jewels, and to locate valuable oil and natural gas deposits deep underwater. They were using a sonar. Basically, this equipment is like a sound-based radar. It sends out sound waves underwater, and when those waves hit something, like a sunken ship, they bounce back. The system can figure out where and how far the object is just by listening to the echo. So, the couple was scanning the seafloor with this equipment more than 2,000 feet below the surface. And then, out of nowhere, they found something way more interesting than gold or oil. They found stones. Not just any stones. I'm talking huge, perfectly arranged stones. Kind of like a mini version of the pyramid at Chichen Itza, or even better, like a bunch of tiny submerged Chichen Itzas. Yep, they saw that, or at least they think they did. The thing is, sonar doesn't work like a camera. It definitely doesn't record video or take actual pictures underwater. What it does do is create images using sound. And those images are usually just outlines or shapes, kind of like a blurry black and white sketch. It shows you where things are, but not exactly what they look like. And that's exactly what happened back then. The equipment started producing images of these perfectly organized stone structures, and it really looked like some kind of urban development. I mean, the site was just too organized, too symmetrical to be just random rocks. But it sounded too good to be true. I mean, this discovery could totally change everything we know about ancient civilizations on the American continent. So the scientists decided it would be too irresponsible to announce anything without finding more evidence first. And that's why they decided to go back to that same spot. This time they sent down an underwater remotely operated vehicle to actually see what was going on beneath the sea. See? This robot was basically an underwater cameraman. And yep, it confirmed it. There was definitely something strange down there. It looked like an ancient city made of huge, smooth blocks of granite. These rocks were about 8 feet by 10 feet. Some were in pyramid shapes, others were circular. Some seemed to be deliberately cut and then stacked on top of each other, while others appeared isolated from the rest. Together, they looked like they were forming corridors and outlines of rooms. It was like finding large buildings in the middle of an underwater desert. These images were enough for Zalitsky to seal the deal. Back then, she confirmed that this amazing structure, her words, could have been a large urban center. Again, her words. Then the couple started to speculate. They said that these structures were probably built more than 6,000 years ago, which would make them older than the Great Pyramids of Egypt. It's even older than the famous Maya, the civilization that used to live in the Americas and is known for their ancient and advanced temples. The research also suggested that these structures might belong to a civilization that lived on the American continent thousands of years ago, and that we didn't even know about. This supposed civilization once thrived on a 100-mile land bridge connecting Cuba to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. But then, something catastrophic happened. According to their theory, the Earth's faults shifted beneath the surface, leading to a massive earthquake. Then, in the blink of an eye, the entire bridge was destroyed. The land was swallowed up by the sea and ended up at the bottom of the ocean, and this civilization disappeared. Of course, all the connections to the famous Atlantis myth got the media totally hooked on the story. News websites ran headlines like "Lost City of the Caribbean Found" and "Atlantis Found in Cuba." So, could that really be Atlantis? I mean, did they finally find the remains of this supposedly super advanced and lost civilization? Well, it's hard to say. From the start, part of the scientific community wasn't buying into the story too much. First, there's the issue of the date. Saying that this civilization existed at this spot at least 6,000 years ago just wasn't very credible. Then, some European archaeologists argued that the stones they found using sonar might just be natural limestone, not perfectly sculpted granite. And third, it was too deep. Even with the whole theory of Earth faults opening up and swallowing everything, it's still hard to explain how an entire city ended up so deep in the ocean. For comparison, there is Heraklion, a real ancient Egyptian port city that got submerged. Today, it is only about 19 feet underwater. But this so-called Atlantis city is at depths between 2,000 and 2,460 feet. See how that's totally different, right? People think it would have taken around 50,000 years for such stone structures to sink to the depth where they are said to be found. And according to experts, none of the known civilizations from that long ago had the ability to build such structures. But for Zalitsky, yes, it was possible. She still believed in the fault theory to explain how this land ended up at the bottom of the ocean so fast. Big movements of the Earth's tectonic plates are usually followed by things like volcanoes and earthquakes. So, according to her, it's a powerful event, and the island sinking could have happened really quickly. This earthquake theory could also explain why some of the megaliths on the seafloor look organized while others don't. But to really prove any of this, they needed a specially designed robot to go down there again and take samples of the rocks and sediment. That way, they could figure out how old the rocks were and maybe even find signs of human life, like carvings, sculptures, or artifacts. The problem is, drilling into those structures isn't easy. They look like granite, and drilling granite that deep underwater is seriously tough. And more than anything, they needed money to do it, a lot of it. So maybe they just never got the funding. Because even with all that initial hype, no further explorations or studies were ever reported. And that lack of follow-up sparked a lot of speculation. Some people even wondered if the story got shut down on purpose, like maybe the authorities wanted to keep something top secret. As if this underwater city was built by some kind of higher extraterrestrial being, and they just don't want us to find out. But truth be told, the strongest argument for saying, yeah, that is definitely a lost city, is that nature supposedly couldn't have built something so symmetrical. Geologists did try to find natural explanations, or at least similar examples from other parts of the world, but they came up short. Still, just because we haven't found a clear natural explanation doesn't mean there isn't one. Nature can create some pretty wild and unexpected stuff, so honestly, that whole too perfect to be natural angle is kind of a weak argument. What most likely happened is that experts just weren't convinced it was actually a sunken city, and that's probably why no one followed up on their work. Over time, the buzz faded, the story disappeared, and the site slipped back into silence. And without more data, the true nature of those underwater formations off Cuba's coast is still a mystery. Being afraid of the ocean is a very understandable fear. We have it in our genes. In the past, humans had to avoid certain dangerous situations, like big animals and deep bodies of water, in order to survive. Plus, we've only explored 5% of the oceans, so we never know what we can stumble upon there. In regular conditions, GoPro is just a camera. But if you find it lying at the bottom of a 400-foot pit in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, that will make your blood run cold. I know 400 feet may not seem like much, but a person who is deep diving for fun usually can swim from 59 to 98 feet deep only, unless they're a professional diver. But say you made it to that pit and retrieved that GoPro. That would have still been fatal to you. In this specific hole where the camera was found, there would be a layer of hydrogen sulfide, a very dangerous and foul-smelling gas, at the mark of 300 feet. The gadget was 100 feet lower, alongside its owners, two long-lost explorers. To this day, very few people manage to dive this deep and go back unscraped. In fact, the deceased explorers were found only with the help of submarines. Now, you might be curious about the content of the GoPro. In stories like this, we expect proof of foul play or sinister footage. But the only thing found there were the images of happy times the explorers had during their trip. A sad ending to a vacay. Now, in deep waters, you can also find many species that seem to be otherworldly, but in a cute and interesting way, like the alien sponge. This fun little fella is a sponge first seen near the Mariana Trench in 2016. It's actually part of an ecosystem dubbed Forest of the Weird. Okay, this makes it sound a bit creepy. And what adds to the weirdness is the fact that the alien sponge had two little holes that resemble little eyes, so like it's peeking at you. Another fun fact? The skeleton of this type of sponge is made of glass. And if you're afraid of cockroaches, I'll let you take a deep breath here. Ready? Cool. Because on the ocean floor, there are more than 20 different types of giant isopods, beetle lookalikes that can be as big as 14 inches. Yikes! But fear not, these guys usually roam the ocean floor for food. So, unless you dive 7,000 feet, which we've just seen is not possible, you won't run into them. Now, despite the horror movie name, the bloody belly comb jelly is actually a fascinating creature you can also find in the ocean. They live in the twilight zone of the ocean, which is between 820 and 4,900 feet below sea level. Pretty far from where you usually soak your feet. But what's so cool about this jelly is its color. Because in the twilight zone, the light is very scarce. Many animals either emit a faint glow, like the anglerfish, or create a camouflage. The jelly here is blood red because, in the pitch-black darkness of the ocean, other animals won't see it digesting colorful bioluminescent prey inside its stomach. Besides, the jelly has a row of combs that spark a very beautiful iridescent light. Beautiful and lethal. Humans also have their fair share of contribution to the weird fest that is the ocean floor. Depending on where you swim, you might just find parts of rocket engines used during the Apollo program. Now, when a rocket is launched into space, parts of it are dropped into the ocean where it runs out of propellant, making the rocket itself lighter. And a part of the Apollo 11 rocket engine, yes, that one that first took humans to land on the moon, was actually recovered from the ocean after more than 4 decades, and you can see it at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. Not a space fan? Well, there's something for the Oregon Trail lovers too. There are 2 locomotives living their best lives, or worst, depending on your point of view, just off the coast of New Jersey. They're from the 1850s and are sitting under 90 feet of water. They probably fell off of a transportation ship during a rough storm, or were intentionally pushed over the barge so that the ship didn't sink. Most of these things can only be seen while diving, but worry not. Even if you have a lingering fear of the deep ocean, you can still find weird things by simply walking on the beach. Look at these bizarre Garfield landline phones washed away in Brittany, France. The French have been having bizarre encounters with the sarcastic orange cat since the 80s, and it took about 30 years for French farmer René Morvan to come forward with a simple explanation. A shipping container with Garfield merchandise got stranded in the sea, only to find its final resting place in a sea cave. We bet Brittany locals are still haunted by the creepy smile of that landline phone. And just like a storm uncovered the Garfield secret stash, it also moved a few ships that sank more than 600 years ago. But this is not a simple Titanic story. It actually sounds more like Pirates of the Caribbean, because when the storm moved those old ships, authorities from Caesarea found 2,000 gold coins, some silver and bronze coins, gemstones, and rings. It was a bigger treasure than a dragon could hoard. But don't get your hopes up. Even though most of the underwater archaeological zones in this region are open to divers, these treasures are safely tucked away in a museum. Speaking of pirates, and I was, another weird thing you can find chillin' in the ocean is the pirate city of Port Royal, Jamaica. In 1692, the city was devastated by an earthquake, followed by a tsunami. A really bad twofer. But the good news is, you can still visit it today, well, scuba diving, that is. This is actually not the only sunken city in the world. There's also Thonis Heracleion in Egypt, which is not at the bottom of the sea per se, but at the mouth of the Nile River. There's also Bajau, a Roman town built atop a supervolcano. Now, you might be thinking Bajau had the same fate as Pompeii, but guess what? The floor actually sank and the town went down with it. So, have you ever heard of underwater crop circles? Back in 1995, divers in Japan spotted perfectly round circles formed in the sand. They were 6 feet in diameter and looked like those crop circles from sci-fi movies. Scientists simply couldn't figure out what or who did it until they caught the culprit red-handed, a tiny male pufferfish only 4 inches long. This little guy uses its body and fins to draw circles and squiggles and decorates his creation with seashells and corals. It takes the fish about a week to do so. All this hard work is part of a mating ritual, and if a female pufferfish likes the art, she will lay her eggs there, right in the center. The circular design of the underwater crop circle actually channels fresh water to the middle of the circle, the ideal scenario for the eggs to develop. And guess what? After she lays the eggs, the female pufferfish leaves, and it's the male that tends the eggs. But just in case fishes are not your thing, we can also offer you a cargo of rubber duckies, turtles, beavers, and frogs. 28,000 of them to be exact. These bath toys were traveling from China to the US, but much like our friend Garfield, were caught in a storm in 1992. From the North Pacific, our friendly duckies and beavers made their way to the UK by 2007, but some were bolder and traveled to Australia, Indonesia, Chile, Hawaii, and even Alaska. Now, have you ever seen a strange thing washed up by the beach? Let us know in the comments. Bye.
These people can spend more than 5 hours a day underwater, and this must be the closest thing we have to actual mermaids. Meet the Bajau tribe from Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. This tribe developed an extraordinary mutation which helps them to almost live in the sea. Known as the nomads of the sea, they've been living near the waters of the Sulu Sea by the Philippines for nearly 1,000 years. Looks like Moana's got competition. Look at their houses. They're built on stilts, and there's a reason for it. These are the traditional lancha houseboats, which are great for getting to the water as often as possible. These little huts can fit a family of 5 and sometimes a community with up to 30 roommates. They're super easy to build. One hut can be completed in only 3 weeks. This also allows the Bajau to move freely across the seas. Since they lived in such a watery climate for generations, thriving on spearfishing and collecting shellfish, they started getting unusual mutations. You're probably thinking about superpowered lungs. But no. They actually developed bigger spleens than the rest of the world. It's 1.5 the size of a normal human. Why is it important? Because the spleen helps store oxygenated red blood cells, so having a bigger one is like having a natural scuba tank. This adaptation is similar to what happens in deep-diving seals, which also have large spleens. Scientists found that they have a special gene called PDE10A that's responsible for this. Bajau can hold their breath for about 10 minutes. For comparison, a regular human can do that for about 30 to 90 seconds. And the world record is 24 minutes and 37 seconds. They also spend up to 60% of their day underwater. And you'll never guess what diets they have. Of course, they eat a variety of sea creatures, especially lobsters, snails, and sea cucumbers, which are known for being very nutritional and even medicinal. They build their boats themselves, fish using traditional methods, and trade their surplus catch with the mainlanders for essential supplies. They also use this money to buy cassava and prepare their cultural dish called cassava pangikai. Since they don't have fridges, they line up tons of caught fish and sun-dry it. Thanks to this technique, the fish can last for weeks. People from this tribe are yet to develop gills and scales, but they have their underwater quirks. When they hold their breath and dive, their bodies go into a special mode where their heart rate slows down and their spleen squeezes out extra oxygen into their bloodstream. Usually, Bajau uses traditional wooden goggles and weighted belts. They also have incredible free-diving skills. They've conquered depths of over 230 feet. They start learning how to swim at about 8 years of age, or even younger. At the same time, they learn to hunt and survive in general. The Bajau people also make their own sunscreen. It's an everyday sunscreen called Borak Buas. It's mostly based on turmeric and rice powder, and women use it to protect their skin from the strong sun rays. It's a simple and cheap way to protect beauty, so it's especially popular among unmarried Bajau women who want to attract a potential spouse. But it's not all smooth sailing. In the 1950s, the Malaysian government put the Bajau in a pretty difficult legal position. After living for centuries as unrestricted nomads, now they have to carefully navigate its journeys across national borders and bureaucratic hurdles. This means that they're not fully stateless, but they're not officially recognized citizens of any country. Today, only a few hundred Bajau families live near Semporna, Malaysia, but it's getting harder to live such a life. The resources are scarce, and recently, some new restrictions appeared on cutting trees for boat repairs. All these things are slowly pushing them towards a more settled yet uncertain life on land. They're forced to resettle in places like the Bajau settlement, but without citizenship, they essentially have no formal rights for things like getting jobs or education. Modern life poses tons of challenges for them. Imagine seeing millions more colors than everyone else. That's what tetrachromats can do. Tetrachromacy is a condition where someone has an extra type of cell in the back of their eye. This allows them to see a broader range of colors. If an average healthy person sees about 10 million, then tetrachromats might see 100 million. The extra cone enhances their ability to differentiate between subtle shades that others might not notice. This mutation requires 2 X chromosomes, so it actually happens to women. And it's not like this is a super rare thing either. The study says that about 12% of women possess this unique condition, and that's a huge number. Most tetrachromats don't even know they have this super vision. They might not realize they're seeing more colors than an average person. This makes spotting tetrachromats and studying them kinda tricky. And since scientists themselves usually can't see more than about 10 million colors, it's also pretty hard to test people for this condition. But they think that, like with X-Men, after some special training, tetrachromats might unlock the full potential of their ultra abilities. Marfan syndrome is a genetic condition that affects the body's connective tissues, making them more elastic. This can make you unusually tall, have elongated limbs, and often be extremely flexible. And some people use this as an advantage in their careers. Javier Botet was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome at a young age, but he made a name for himself in the horror film industry. He can contort his body in such an eerie and unsettling way that this has landed him roles in numerous films such as Mama, The Conjuring 2, It, and Slender Man. But Marfan syndrome is a spectrum disorder. While some people with the condition can live relatively normal lives, others may face serious health issues. Do you sometimes wish that there was less sleep so you'd have more time? Well, some of us got that blessing. While most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night, some people can function well on only 4 or 6 hours. This genetic mutation, found in a gene called DEC2, actually influences many different species, not only humans. For example, it also works on mice and fruit flies. DEC2 helps regulate circadian rhythms, the natural biological clock. This mutation affects the production of orexin, which is a hormone involved in wakefulness and maintaining the sleep-wake cycle. Basically, it helps release morning hormones earlier than usual and fades away before dawn. They discovered this gene in a family of natural short sleepers. It was a bunch of people who go to bed at a normal time, 11 p.m. to midnight, but wake up at 5 in the morning without any issue. It's a super rare mutation. It might sound like something out of a comic book, but humans can actually have super strength. Turns out, some accidental mutations can unleash titanic strength without any crazy workout routines. There are 2 proteins in our body, myostatin and activin A, that usually are secreted by muscle cells to suppress excessive growth. In other words, these 2 help regulate the size and number of your muscle cells, so you don't end up accidentally looking like Schwarzenegger. But as you can guess, some do end up like that. People with this genetic condition don't produce these proteins. Without hitting the gym, they can naturally grow their muscles extraordinarily large, resulting in super strength. It's called myostatin-related muscle hypertrophy. Sounds kinda dangerous, right? And it is. When you become a Superman, there's also the risk of muscle imbalance, heart and joint issues, and other problems. Ever since Plato wrote about the allegory of Atlantis, humanity has been fascinated with the possibility of the discovery of a thriving underwater civilization. Fancy joining me on a trip to a few historic underwater sites? Let's see what we can find out about ancient civilizations. The first one on our list is what is being called the underwater Stonehenge. Scientists have recently discovered a mysterious pile of cairns that stretch for miles under the shimmering waters of Lake Constance at the borders of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Archaeologists began to explore the site back in 2015, and they haven't been able to understand yet what it was actually used for. What they do know is that there is a 12-mile line of 170 human-made stone cairns under Lake Constance. Scientists say this was most likely the result of a combined work of several villages. The cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose. The formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. Now, what were we humans doing back then? We were living in the prime years of the so-called Stone Age. We were beginning to make artifacts from stone and use them to hunt and eat. Can you imagine what a knife and fork might have looked like back in those days? It's no coincidence that scientists call this site the underwater Stonehenge, though. Both sites are believed to have been built around the same period of time. You see, Stonehenge dates back to around 3,100 BCE. Both sites carry the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circle. Not to mention the fact that scientists also haven't figured out why on earth our early ancestors would feel the need to build a monument such as Stonehenge. Well, the mystery of Lake Constance hasn't been solved yet. Who were the Neolithic people from this area? And for what purpose did they go through such an amount of work and effort to build this huge stone site? Next, we're taking you on a tour of the Ryukyu Islands just off the coast of Japan. You're diving deep down to an archaeological site. But I should warn you, the waters of the Pacific Ocean are far from smooth. It doesn't take long before you see a huge structure, thanks to the sunlight shining down on the seabed. At first, it looks like Machu Picchu's ruins located across the globe in Peru. As you approach the site, you slowly figure out its forms. A pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or a castle. Could this be a sign of human activity? What you've just seen is known today as the Yonaguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 soccer fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising feature is its expanse of terraces. Explorers and scientists believe that Yonaguni might be 10,000 years old. But whether it's a human-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yonaguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived to the bottom of the ocean to explore the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. On the monument's surface, there is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There's also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure. And, according to Kimura, turtles have an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age is around 10,000 years. However, not all scientists support this theory. For many, Yonaguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it's not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation in Northern Ireland, known as the Giant's Causeway. The basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they're actually the result of volcanic activity in the region. Now, you're flying to the coast of Greece, 4 hours away from Athens. More specifically, you're in the Peloponnese Peninsula. You dust off an old snorkel and head for a free dive on a bright sunny day. Sometime into the dive, you start noticing patterns on a seabed. 13 feet below the surface, outlines of familiar objects start to appear, one by one. As you continue swimming, what looks like the outline of an entire city emerges in front of your eyes. Are you wondering how water could have taken the whole city? Rocks are perfectly aligned into what appears to be the foundation of a building. This is Pavlopetri, an ancient city you've probably heard about for the first time. It was discovered by Nicholas Fleming, a British oceanographer, when he was on vacation in Greece. He had heard rumors about Pavlopetri's existence and indeed found several artifacts on the seafloor. He went back to the area a year later with the team. They found a site filled with pots, storage vessels, and tools. A kernstone, for instance, is a tool used for grinding grains and turning them into flour. Multiple amphoras indicate that this settlement dates back to the Bronze Age, 5,500 years ago, when people started living in towns. The settlement is believed to have existed for over 2,400 years. Today, Pavlopetri is considered the oldest submerged town ever discovered, and what's impressive is that it wasn't a simple village. It was a vibrant port city with stone buildings, a marketplace, streets, and even squares. The next stop on our voyage is one of today's most famous underwater cities that has been turned into an archaeological park. The city of Port Royal in Jamaica exists only below the surface, but in 1692 it was one of the wealthiest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Port Royal was the center of the British Empire at the time and an important trade city that attracted people from all over the region. It was also home to real-life pirates of the Caribbean. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the people of Port Royal met a different fate than they had probably expected. The city woke up shaking. People were thrown out of their beds by the power of a massive earthquake, ranking 7.5 on a Richter scale. One survivor said he had seen Earth opening up and swallowing the whole town. What he said could be true, as the city was mainly built on sand. The ground swallowed buildings, roads, you name it. Geysers erupted, and finally, waves as big as 10-story buildings hit the city. About 33 acres of the city disappeared under the water. Amazingly, most of its 17th century remains are still in good condition under 40 feet of water. Archaeologists have found taverns, storage rooms, kitchens, and recreational buildings used for diverse purposes. You can also see a grand lion statue, a submerged bridge, and many picturesque arches. Of course, I saved the best for last: India. Just off its coast lies another sunken marvel. A site known as the Lost City of Cambay is located in the Gulf with a similar name. It remained undiscovered until 2001, when the National Institute of Ocean Technology made a routine water assessment. With the help of sonar technology, which sends a wave sound to the bottom of the sea, they found something far beneath the surface. Images showed well-defined geometric shapes spread along a 5-mile stretch. The remains date to more than 9,500 years ago, meaning this civilization was lost at around the end of the Ice Age. Debris recovered from the site included construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even bones. Scientists argue whether these artifacts are indeed from the site, but if they truly are, then the lost city of Cambay might be the oldest civilization in the world.